Let me ask you something you rarely admit. What is the one flaw you pray no one notices? Is it your fear of speaking? Your lack of money? Your awkwardness? Your past failure? Your soft heart? Your impatience? Your insecurity? You call it weakness. You hide it. You apologize for it. You try to fix it before anyone sees it. But what if the thing you are ashamed of is not your flaw? What if it is unfinished power? Most people spend their lives trying to become strong in the places where they feel small. They study confidence. They imitate charisma. They borrow personalities. They pretend. And in doing so, they become predictable. And in the world of power, predictability is more dangerous than weakness. There was once a sharp observer of human nature named Niccolò Machiavelli. He did not study how people should behave. He studied how they truly behave. He did not ask, "What is moral?" He asked, "What works?" He observed rulers who lost everything because they tried to appear flawless. He observed underestimated men who rose because others dismissed them. He saw fragile states become dominant empires. He saw weakness transformed into strategy. And he understood something that most never do. Power is not about eliminating weakness. It is about positioning it. Your greatest disadvantage can become your greatest advantage if you stop treating it as shame and start treating it as material. You are not defeated because you are weak. You are defeated because you do not understand your weakness. This is not motivation. This is not comfort. This is instruction. In this video, you will learn a formula, not for becoming perfect, but for becoming dangerous in a quiet way. You will learn how weakness creates blind spots in others, how exposure creates leverage, how underestimation becomes camouflage, how narrative reshapes reality, how timing transforms vulnerability into dominance. But first, you must accept something uncomfortable. The world does not reward honesty, it rewards positioning. And if you continue trying to erase your weakness, you will spend your life fighting yourself instead of using yourself. So let us begin. Lesson 1. The illusion of weakness. The first mistake you make is believing your weakness is real. You think weakness is an objective truth, but weakness is often perception, and perception is a battlefield. What one man calls weakness, another calls unpredictability. What one leader calls softness, another calls approachability. What one entrepreneur calls inexperience, another calls innovation. Weakness is rarely absolute. It is context. Imagine a young commander in a divided kingdom. He is not physically imposing. He does not roar like the other generals. His voice is calm. His appearance is unremarkable. The court whispers, he lacks presence. He does not inspire fear. He will fail. The older generals are proud. They believe power must look loud. They believe strength must look aggressive. So they prepare for obvious threats. They expect bold moves. They defend against force. But the young commander studies quietly. Because he is not seen as threatening, he is allowed into rooms without suspicion. Because he is not feared, he is trusted with information. Because he does not dominate, others speak freely around him. And within months, he knows more about the kingdom's weaknesses than any general who tried to look powerful. Was he weak, or was he invisible? And which is more dangerous? You must understand something critical. What embarrasses you often disarms others. Your insecurity makes you listen more carefully. Your lack of resources forces you to think creatively. Your social discomfort makes you observe deeply. Your rejection makes you independent. Yet you curse these traits. You try to replace them. You try to look like those who seem confident. But the loud and confident are often watched. They are measured. They are resisted. The underestimated are overlooked. And overlooked people move freely. In modern life, this illusion appears everywhere. In business, the small startup competes with giants. The giant sees no threat. The startup experiments, adapts, pivots. The giant is slow. The weak wins. In leadership, a quiet manager is dismissed as lacking authority. But employees trust them. Information flows upward. Problems are revealed early. The strong authoritarian leader hears only what flatters him. The weak leader hears truth. In relationships, the person who admits uncertainty creates intimacy. The person who pretends perfection creates distance. What you call weakness changes behavior around you. And behavior is the true currency of power. Here is the strategic reframing. Weakness is not the absence of strength. It is strength unrecognized by others. When people believe you lack something, they lower their guard. And when guards are lowered, doors open. The problem is not that you are weak. The problem is that you agree with their judgment. The moment you internalize the label, you shrink. But when you understand that perception can be shaped, you begin to play a deeper game. Ask yourself, what do people assume about you? Too young? Too quiet? Too emotional? Too soft? Too inexperienced? Too unconventional? Good. Now ask a better question. How does that assumption change how they treat you? Do they speak more openly? Do they reveal strategy? Do they underestimate your timing? Do they give you room to operate? Every assumption creates opportunity. Yet most people react emotionally. They rush to prove themselves. They overcompensate. They force strength. They become transparent. If you are underestimated and you rush to appear powerful, you lose the advantage of invisibility. Power is not about correcting perception immediately. It is about deciding when perception benefits you. Consider a modern example. A young employee enters a competitive corporate environment. Colleagues see youth and assume naivety. They exclude him from serious discussions. They underestimate his understanding. He has two choices. He can argue, prove, and demand recognition, or he can observe. If he chooses pride, he triggers resistance. If he chooses strategy, he gathers insight, he listens, he studies alliances, he notes insecurities, he identifies who truly holds influence. Within a year, he understands the system better than those who mocked him. And when he finally speaks, he speaks precisely. Now his words carry weight, not because he shouted, but because he waited. This is the first shift you must make. Stop trying to erase your weakness. Start mapping it. Write it down. Examine it. Ask, what does this trait allow me to see that others miss? If you are shy, you notice tone. You read micro behaviors. You detect shifts in mood. If you lack money, you become efficient. You calculate risk carefully. You innovate under constraint. If you have failed, you understand fear. You understand recovery. You understand humility. If you are emotional, you understand motivation. You sense shifts in loyalty. You read tension before it explodes. None of these are weaknesses by nature. They are untrained strengths. Society glorifies visible dominance. But true power often grows in silence. There is also another dimension. Weakness creates hunger. A man born into comfort rarely studies survival deeply. A woman born into struggle studies people, patterns, and opportunity. Comfort breeds complacency. Constraint breeds strategy. Many of history's most capable leaders began underestimated, not because they were weak, but because they were misunderstood. Understand this carefully. Your weakness is often a distortion created by comparison. You compare your quietness to someone's charisma. You compare your caution to someone's boldness. You compare your slow thinking to someone's quick talk. But quick talk often hides shallow thought. Boldness often hides recklessness. Charisma often hides insecurity. When you compare, you measure surface traits. Strategy measures outcomes. Here is a practical exercise for the next week. Do not try to appear strong. Instead, observe how others reveal themselves around you. When they assume you lack power, notice what they say. When they assume you lack influence, notice what they expose. When they assume you are harmless, Notice how relaxed they become. This is data, and data is power. There is also a darker truth. Those who appear powerful are targeted. They face envy. They face resistance. They face constant scrutiny. Those who appear modest move beneath the radar. The loud lion attracts hunters. The quiet fox avoids them. But remember, the fox survives not because it is weak. It survives because it is underestimated. If you understand this, you will stop resenting your position. You will start studying it. You will ask, how long can I remain underestimated? When should I reveal capability? What advantage does invisibility give me? This is strategic patience. The illusion of weakness becomes your shield, but only if you resist the urge to defend your ego. Ego demands recognition. Strategy demands timing. Let me tell you something uncomfortable. Most people expose their strength too early. They show ambition before building alliances. They reveal intelligence before understanding politics. They display skill before assessing competition. And once exposed, they are measured. And once measured, they are challenged. But if you delay exposure, if you allow others to believe they are superior, they relax. And relaxed opponents make mistakes. You must learn to ask yourself, am I trying to look strong? Or am I trying to win? These are not the same. Winning is often invisible at first. Strength is often silent. Here is the final truth of this lesson. Weakness is rarely the problem. Impatience is. If you can tolerate being misunderstood, you gain time. If you can tolerate being underestimated, you gain information. If you can tolerate being doubted, you gain freedom. And freedom is the foundation of strategic movement. But do not misunderstand me. You must not remain weak. You must transform perception into leverage. And that transformation begins not by revealing your strength, but by hiding what must grow. Because what grows in the open is attacked. What grows in silence becomes unstoppable. And this leads us to something deeper. You have learned that weakness is often illusion. But what if the greater mistake is exposing your development too soon? What if your vulnerability must be protected, not defended? In the next lesson, you will learn why what you show the world can determine whether your weakness matures into power or is crushed before it has the chance. And that truth is more dangerous than you expect. Because sometimes survival depends not on strength, but on secrecy. Lesson 2, hide what must grow. You now understand that weakness is often illusion, but illusion alone is not enough. Even raw potential, if exposed too early, can be destroyed. There is a season for revelation, and there is a season for concealment. Most people fail not because they are incapable, but because they reveal their growth before it is protected. A seed placed on stone will never become a tree, not because it lacks life, but because it lacks shelter. The same is true for your ambition, your skill, your transformation. When you first decide to improve, you are fragile, your confidence is new, your discipline is unstable, your clarity is forming. Yet what do most people do? They announce it, they tell friends, they post about it, they declare it boldly, and immediately they face judgment. Comparison, skepticism, expectation. The growth collapses under attention. Understand this carefully. Attention is pressure. Pressure strengthens the prepared, but it crushes the unfinished. There was once a minor noble in a divided republic. He lacked military strength. He lacked wealth. He lacked allies. But he possessed ambition. Instead of declaring his intentions, he acted modestly. He listened more than he spoke. He allowed others to believe he sought nothing grand. Privately, he studied. Years passed. He appeared harmless. But beneath that harmless appearance, competence matured. Reputation quietly strengthened. When crisis struck the republic, the loud men demanded command. But the modest noble had offended no one. And so, he was chosen, not because he declared strength, but because he allowed it to mature unseen. This is the principle. What must grow must first be hidden. Silence is protection. When you grow in silence, you remove pressure, you remove commentary, you remove interference. But concealment is not deception, it is incubation. Applause before achievement is dangerous. It satisfies you too soon. And satisfaction weakens hunger. Hunger is necessary in early growth. Let your results speak before your ambition does. Not all transparency is wise. Transparency is powerful only when chosen carefully. You must ask, is my weakness strong enough to survive criticism? If the answer is no, protect it. Hide during formation. Reveal during execution. Not before. Not too late. Stop seeking validation for potential. Seek validation for results. Potential impresses only the naive. Results command respect. When you grow in silence, your confidence becomes internal, unshakable, because it was built without witnesses. Such confidence is dangerous. It waits. And waiting is power. Your weakness is metal. Do not display it while it bends. Temper it until it cuts. Sometimes the greatest leverage does not come from hiding weakness, but from stepping directly into exposure and turning it against those who judge you. And that requires a different kind of courage. One that most will never attempt. In the next lesson, you will discover something most avoid. There are moments when concealment is no longer power, when exposure becomes a weapon, when the very flaw others mock becomes the tool that disarms them. This path requires courage of a rarer kind, the kind that does not retreat. Lesson 3. Turn exposure into leverage. Until now, you have learned two disciplines. First, weakness is often illusion. Second, what must grow must be protected. But now we move into more dangerous territory. What happens when your weakness is no longer hidden? When your failure is public? When your flaw is obvious? Most people collapse in this moment. They defend. They deny. They retreat. They believe exposure equals defeat. But this is where the thinking of Niccolò Machiavelli becomes sharp and uncomfortable. When something cannot be hidden, it must be controlled. Exposure removes secrecy, but it does not remove strategy. Once your weakness is visible, others believe they understand you. And when people believe they understand you, they stop looking deeper. This is leverage. Imagine a statesman publicly known for failure. If he defends aggressively, he looks insecure. If he blames others, he looks weak. If he hides, he confirms suspicion. But if he calmly acknowledges the failure, studies it publicly, and speaks about what it taught him, he controls the story. This is the principle. If you cannot prevent exposure, direct it. Weakness becomes fatal only when others define it. If you define it first, you reshape its meaning. In modern life, this appears constantly. A failed product, a bruised reputation. If you deny, trust erodes. If you blame, credibility weakens. But if you say, yes, this failed, here is why. Here is what we learned. Embarrassment becomes authority. Experience is power earned through exposure. Or consider someone known to be socially awkward. Hiding feels forced. Acknowledgement stabilizes expectation. The awkward becomes authentic. The authentic becomes trustworthy. The trustworthy becomes influential. Exposure, when owned, reduces threat. There is a deeper truth when people expose your weakness. They expect shame. If you remain composed, you disrupt expectation. Disrupted expectation creates uncertainty. Uncertainty shifts power. This does not mean you confess everything. It means that when a weakness is undeniable, you absorb it strategically. Sometimes exposure can be exaggerated deliberately. If others underestimate you, you allow it. And when the time comes to act, your preparation surprises them. Surprise is leverage. Every label creates expectation. Every expectation creates a pattern. Every pattern can be manipulated. But this requires discipline. Exposure touches ego. Most people react emotionally. The one who stays composed turns discomfort into advantage. Here is the instruction. When your weakness is exposed, pause. Ask, what are they expecting from me? Then deny them that reaction. If they expect shame, offer calm. If they expect anger, offer curiosity. If they expect collapse, offer stability. The response they do not predict is the response that shifts control. There is also freedom in public failure. Once exposure has occurred, fear weakens, and those who do not fear embarrassment are harder to intimidate. This is why some emerge stronger after scandal. They accept, they adjust, they move forward. Resilience commands respect. But there is a warning. Do not confuse recklessness with strategy. True leverage comes from composure, not theatrics. Exposure becomes a stage. But you control the script. When someone doubts you, and you perform anyway, their certainty fractures. When someone mocks your past, and you build silently, their voice fades. There is a final dimension. When weakness is owned, it can attract allies. Controlled authenticity builds loyalty, not everything revealed. Enough to show humanity, not enough to surrender advantage. Now ask yourself, what weakness of yours is already visible? Instead of hiding, ask, how can I define this differently? Because when exposure is embraced strategically, it no longer threatens you. It arms you. And what you are about to learn next will determine whether you merely survive judgment or use it to dominate quietly. And what you are about to learn next will determine whether you merely survive judgment or learn how to stand inside it without being touched. Lesson 4. Weaponize underestimation. By now, you understand 3 things. Weakness is often perception. Growth must be protected. Exposure, when controlled, becomes leverage. Now we arrive at a more refined strategy. Not merely surviving underestimation, but using it. Most people hate being underestimated. They speak louder. They prove harder. They demand recognition. And in doing so, they destroy one of the most powerful strategic positions available. Underestimation is camouflage. And camouflage is advantage. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that power is not always displayed through force. Sometimes it is secured through positioning. If rivals do not see you as dangerous, they will not unite against you. If competitors do not see you as a threat, they will not prepare defenses. If colleagues assume you lack ambition, they will not guard their influence. Underestimation reduces resistance. Imagine 2 figures entering a competitive arena. One arrives with bold declarations. The room tightens. The other arrives quiet, measured, unassuming. Which one faces opposition first? The obvious contender. The underestimated moves through unnoticed corridors. This is not pretending to be incompetent. It is allowing others to believe they have accurately measured you when they have not. People do not study those they believe inferior. They study threats. And if you are not labeled as one, you gain freedom. Freedom to observe, freedom to prepare, freedom to build alliances without scrutiny. Underestimation invites disclosure. Disclosure creates intelligence, and intelligence wins battles long before they begin. When people underestimate you, they become careless. Carelessness reveals intention. Preparation is the hidden edge. Underestimation weakens the opponent's preparation, not yours. But this requires discipline. Ego wants correction. Strategy wants outcome. Ask yourself, do you want to look powerful or become powerful? Looking powerful invites challenge. Becoming powerful invites surprise. Surprise shifts balance. Consider the advisor who speaks less. He allows others to assume simplicity. Others trust him. They reveal frustrations. They expose weaknesses. When crisis arrives, He already understands everything. He won through invisibility. Underestimation protected him long enough to position himself. When someone believes you inferior, they relax. Relaxed people reveal vulnerability, and vulnerability creates leverage. But there is danger. If you remain underestimated too long, you risk being dismissed permanently. So you must learn timing. Underestimation is useful during preparation, but when execution begins, strength must be visible, not dramatic, not aggressive, undeniable. Let them underestimate your preparation, your discipline, your resilience, then act. When the result cannot be ignored, sudden competence is more powerful than constant assertion. It forces reassessment. Reassessment creates hesitation. Hesitation creates opportunity. There is also protection here. Envy targets visible superiority. It rarely targets quiet growth. This is not shrinking yourself. It is restraint. And restraint is rare. Now ask yourself, where are you being underestimated? Instead of feeling insulted, consider the opportunity. Underestimation becomes dangerous only when you believe it. If you treat it as cover, it becomes armor. There is a final insight. When you are underestimated, your mistakes are judged less harshly. This gives you room to experiment. Quiet failure teaches. By the time they notice you, your learning curve is complete, and history rewrites itself. But we are not finished. You have learned to understand weakness, to protect growth, to control exposure, to weaponize underestimation. Yet there is one more battlefield. Perception is shaped by story, and whoever controls the story controls meaning. In the next lesson, you will learn how to control the narrative, not only of your weakness, but of your entire identity. Because power is not only what you are, it is what others believe you are. And belief, once directed, can quietly crown you without resistance. In the next lesson, you will learn how to control the narrative, not only of your weakness, but of your entire identity. Because power is not only what you are, it is what others believe you are. And belief, once directed, can move nations or quietly crown you without resistance. Lesson 5. Control the narrative before it controls you. By now, you understand something most people never grasp. Weakness is perception. Perception creates behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. Now we step into the most subtle layer of power. Story. Human beings do not respond to reality. They respond to interpretation. And whoever shapes interpretation shapes influence. This is where the insight of Niccolò Machiavelli becomes especially sharp. Rulers did not survive merely by force, but by managing how their actions were understood. Two leaders perform the same act. One is called decisive. The other is called ruthless. The action is identical. The narrative is different. If your weakness becomes a story told by others, you lose control. If you define the story yourself, you gain direction. This does not mean lying. It means framing. Every weakness can be framed in multiple ways. Stubbornness becomes determination. Caution becomes wisdom. Emotional depth becomes empathy. Failure becomes experience. Silence becomes focus. The trait remains the same. The interpretation changes. And interpretation determines respect or dismissal. Consider a merchant known for hesitation. Instead of arguing, he reframes. Gradually, hesitation becomes prudence. He did not change his nature. He changed the story around it. Most people allow others to describe them. You are too quiet. You are too intense. You are too sensitive. And instead of reframing, they defend. Defense signals insecurity. Reframing signals ownership. Narrative determines expectation. Expectation determines treatment. Treatment determines opportunity. There is strategic protection in narrative. The reality is not denied. It is directed. If you do not control your narrative, moments of weakness define you permanently. But when you frame the meaning of events, you reduce uncertainty. And people fear uncertainty. more than weakness. Narrative shapes identity. Identity shapes behavior. The story you tell others becomes the story you tell yourself. Control it carefully. But narrative must be credible. You cannot invent strength. You can only interpret traits intelligently. Narrative controls emotion. Emotion controls action. If you allow weakness to become gossip, it grows. If you address it with clarity, it shrinks into context. When you define your story first, critics lose momentum. Clarity restricts imagination, and imagination is often harsher than reality. But do not over-explain. Understatement creates authority. Now ask yourself, what story surrounds your weakness right now? Is it deficiency or development? Narrative without behavior collapses. Behavior without narrative confuses. Combine them, and perception becomes deliberate. Narrative prepares the stage for revelation. Without narrative, success looks accidental. With narrative, it looks inevitable. Inevitable power is respected more than surprising power. But timing remains. Too early, it appears arrogant. Too late, it appears defensive. You now understand perception, protection, exposure, underestimation, story. But there is one element that determines mastery. Timing. When to reveal, when to remain silent, when to strike. Because even the sharpest blade is useless if drawn too soon or too late. And in the final lesson, you will learn the discipline that separates the patient strategist from the impulsive pretender. You are close now. But the last step is the one most fail to take. Lesson 6. Master the timing of revelation. You have gathered the pieces. You have seen that weakness is often illusion. You have learned to protect growth. You have turned exposure into leverage. You have worn underestimation like camouflage. You have shaped the narrative around your identity. Now comes the final discipline, timing. Without timing, strategy collapses. A truth spoken too early sounds like arrogance. The same truth spoken at the right moment sounds like authority. A display of strength too soon invites resistance. The same strength revealed after patience invites respect. This is the refinement that separates impulse from mastery. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that power is not merely about action, but about when action occurs. He observed that fortune favors not the fastest, but the most prepared when the moment opens. Imagine an ambitious advisor in a royal court. He knows the ruler is aging. He knows rivals are competing. He knows instability is coming. If he moves too soon, he appears disloyal. If he waits too long, another claims the throne's confidence. So he studies rhythm. He builds alliances quietly. He strengthens competence silently. He shapes perception carefully. Then, when crisis finally erupts, he steps forward, not loudly, not desperately, calmly. And because he prepared in silence, his action looks natural, almost inevitable. That is timing. Timing is not luck. It is awareness meeting preparation. In your own life, timing determines everything. When you reveal your capability, when you request promotion, when you launch your project, when you confront disrespect, when you shift identity. Too early, and you face unnecessary resistance. Too late, and opportunity fades. So how do you know the moment? You watch for 3 signals. First, stability. Your skill must be mature enough to withstand pressure. If it is still fragile, wait. Second, advantage. You must hold more information than your opponents. If they still know as much as you do, wait. Third, momentum. Circumstances must lean slightly in your favor. A crisis, a gap, a need. Timing often hides inside instability. When others panic, the prepared move. When others hesitate, the patient act. Most people fail here because of ego. They reveal strength to prove worth. They announce readiness to silence doubt. They strike to feel powerful. But true timing is not emotional. It is strategic. You do not act because you are tired of waiting. You act because waiting has given you leverage. And when you finally reveal your strength, it must be decisive. No half measures, no timid display. When the moment arrives, clarity replaces hesitation. This is the transformation. Weakness, once protected, once reframed, once sharpened, becomes undeniable. Not because you shouted, but because you chose the exact moment to be seen. There is one final truth you must accept. Weakness is not destiny. It is material. Some people live their entire lives trying to hide it. Others surrender to it. But a rare few study it, protect it, shape it, and release it at the precise moment it becomes power. In the end, you choose. You can let your weakness define your limits, or you can define its timing. And understand this, strength is common, loud ambition is common, but controlled revelation, that is rare, and rare qualities command influence. So do not rush, do not shrink, do not announce what is not ready. Prepare in silence, move with awareness, reveal with precision. Because weakness is either something you suffer or something you weaponize. And the difference is not talent, it is strategy. Choose carefully. The world does not fear the one who struggles. It respects the one who turns struggle into silent advantage. And those who master timing do not need to prove their power. They simply reveal it when it is already too late to stop them. If these lessons resonated, you already know what to do. Subscribe, not for noise, but for alignment. Share this with someone who understands. That power is not announced, it is revealed. And remember, those who master timing never ask to be noticed. They choose when the world has no choice but to see them.